Behind the charming smiles and confident exteriors of people we consider friends, neighbors, and even loved ones, lies a profound tendency to be forever stuck on the precipice of disaster, waiting for the other shoe to drop. And the question is, why do so many of us find ourselves drawn to, or even perpetually seeking out, situations and relationships where this sense of impending doom is palpable? It's rooted in a deep-seated insecurity, driven by an overwhelming fear of abandonment, that forces us to seek constant reassurance, often through manipulative means, in an attempt to prevent the very thing we're trying to avoid: rejection, loss, and isolation. I know this feeling all too well, and I'm sure you do too, because haven't you ever noticed how people often sabotage their own relationships, push away those who love them most, and even engage in self-destructive behaviors that guarantee a swift and irreversible outcome, all while protesting to the world that they are just seeking love, connection, and security? But have you ever stopped to wonder why it is precisely these self-sabotaging patterns that seem to be the defining characteristics of those around us and within ourselves? And what's more, have you ever considered that the driving force behind all this pain, drama, and confusion may be rooted in an insidious desire for a specific type of emotional experience, one that's been perpetuated through a complex web of childhood traumas, family dynamics, and societal expectations? In this video, we're going to shed light on the hidden power of almost, and dive into the unspoken world of human psychology, to uncover the root causes of our most destructive tendencies, and the often unspoken desires that fuel them, so that you can finally understand why you, and those around you, consistently seek out, and get stuck in, relationships and love that are destined to leave you broken, bleeding, and begging for one more chance. When we say someone's behavior is driven by their need for control, it's often a smokescreen for their own deep-seated fear of powerlessness, which stems from the primal urge to belong and be validated. We often view someone's need for validation as a weakness, but in reality, it's a fundamental human drive that reveals the depths of our emotional insecurity and our desperate attempt to grasp for a sense of self-worth. Insecurity doesn't drive people to seek love or validation. It drives them to manipulate and control others as a means to alleviate their own emotional distress, to momentarily feel more grounded and secure. The ego's insatiable hunger for attention and admiration is often a direct result of a deeply ingrained fear of abandonment and rejection, which manifests as an incessant craving for external validation to prove one's worth. When we're drawn to someone, it's not just their charm or charisma that captivates us. It's also the way they make us feel seen, heard, and validated, which speaks to our primal need for connection and our deep-seated desire for acceptance. We often attribute our partner's manipulative behavior to a toxic personality or a lack of emotional intelligence. But in truth, it's a cry for help, a desperate attempt to bridge the emotional gaps in their own psyche, to temporarily stave off the crushing feeling of disconnection and isolation. When we're operating from the dark side of fear, we tend to repel love by constantly proving our worth, never feeling secure enough to truly be vulnerable. What's fascinating is how many people unconsciously sabotage their relationships by manipulating others into giving them the validation they desperately crave, rather than genuinely working on self-acceptance. Our deepest motives often revolve around the fear of being abandoned, which in turn drives us to exert control over those we love, ultimately suffocating the very connection we're trying to hold on to. By seeking validation through our partner's admiration, we're attempting to fill the void within ourselves that has been left by our own self-depletion. But in doing so, we risk losing the one thing we truly need: real connection. Fear of abandonment is deeply intertwined with our ego, which in turn prevents us from truly seeing our partner as a separate individual with their own needs and desires, rather than just a means to an end. Ultimately, it's our self-deception that leads us down this path, convincing ourselves that our partner's love is conditional upon our constant validation. when in reality, it's our own fear of being abandoned that's creating this crippling dependency. We often overlook the fact that people use their insecurities to fuel the very behavior that pushes others away, creating a self-perpetuating cycle of fear and rejection. The need for validation is a deeply ingrained urge that drives individuals to seek external affirmation, thereby ceding control to those who possess the power to grant or deny that validation. Insecurity is the hidden engine that propels people towards those who seem to offer the greatest sense of security, a dynamic that often masquerades as genuine love or attraction. When we allow our insecurities to dictate our behavior, we inevitably become trapped in a web of self-deception, convincing ourselves that we're acting in our own best interests, when in reality, we're simply trying to appease our inner doubts. At its core, the fear of abandonment is not about the actual loss of a relationship, but about the perceived threat it poses to our sense of identity and self-worth, a fear that's often exploited by those who seek to exert control over us. Manipulation operates under the guise of love and concern, but beneath the surface, it's merely a thinly veiled attempt to stave off the anxiety and uncertainty that arises from our deep-seated insecurities. Here are 6 spoken sentences for the section How Self-Deception Fuels the Cycle of Pain when we're driven by the fear of abandonment. We may convince ourselves that we're being cautious and protective of our emotions, but in reality, we're often sabotaging our relationships to avoid the risk of getting hurt. The cycle of self-deception begins when we're desperate for validation, and we start to see ourselves and others through a distorted lens, believing that we're the ones who are right and others who are wrong. Our ego craves control, but in order to maintain a sense of security, we often sacrifice our own authenticity and needs, leading to a never-ending cycle of pain and disconnection. Self-deception allows us to conveniently forget that our deepest motives are rooted in our childhood experiences and unresolved emotional wounds, rather than any genuine desire for mutual love and connection. In the shadows of our minds, a narrative unfolds, convincing us that our fear of rejection is based on reality, and that others are indeed out to hurt us. But the truth is, this fear stems from our deep-seated insecurities and a profound need for control. Ultimately, our self-deception fuels our need for constant external validation, but the irony is, the more we seek it, the more we'll continue to sabotage our relationships and deepen the cycle of pain, a vicious cycle that's both familiar and all too real. Our desire for security often translates into a craving for validation, a relentless pursuit to prove our worth to others and to ourselves, often at the expense of honest self-reflection and genuine connections. Most people don't act out of malice, but rather from a deep-seated fear of abandonment, which can manifest in desperate attempts to be seen, heard, and loved by others. When we're driven by fear, we often prioritize validation over authenticity, creating a cycle where we seek external approval to compensate for our own lack of self-worth. Behind every need for control or dominance in a relationship lies a profound insecurity, a desperate attempt to grasp onto something that feels tangible and secure in a world that's inherently uncertain. Our attraction to someone is often rooted in our own psychological needs, and our desire to be seen and desired by them can be a desperate cry for validation, rather than a genuine connection with their soul. We're far more likely to repeat patterns of self-sabotage in relationships than we are to genuinely confront the fears and insecurities that drive them. Often because confronting the truth would require a level of self-awareness and emotional vulnerability that's deeply uncomfortable for our ego. In conclusion, understanding the hidden power of almost can revolutionize the way we approach relationships and ourselves. I urge you to take a closer look at your own patterns of behavior and recognize how fear and insecurity drive your actions, but also to acknowledge your capacity for growth and change. If you found this video insightful, please like, comment below with your own observations, and subscribe to my channel for more in-depth explorations of human psychology.